I fucking hate milk. I'm not usually a visual novel person because I kind of struggle to get immersed in the worlds, and I prefer games with a lot of silent storytelling. But every now and then I'll come across a rich, atmospheric, and mysterious title that I just need to get my hands on. This is a story about milk. A girl and her milk. A milk and her girl and a bag. Content warning. Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk is a psychological horror visual novel that came out a few years ago. And for a 20-minute experience, it's incredibly memorable. It's a cryptic little thing that's gotten some traction on the internet lately. It leaves you with a lot of loose ends and is entirely through the lens of an unreliable, severely mentally ill narrator. It's a real feel-good game. Do visual novels count as games? I'm gonna call it a game. Feel free to flame me in the comments. The game begins like this. Help me buy milk. Okay. We play as a sort of voice in the head of a girl battling her racing thoughts as she walks to the store. The girl likes to imagine herself as a character in a visual novel. It helps her gather her thoughts, she says. We can either be really mean to her or less mean. Like telling her she has to go back and redo steps if she walks wrong. But we must be doing something right, because eventually she does make it to the store. Hello, can I?
Oh.
Excuse me, what?
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 Oh.
Excuse me, what? Sometimes we are encouraging as she tries to buy milk, and sometimes we beat down on her. But one must be careful, because if we bully her too much, the girl will banish us from her mind. And when we finally find the sacred milk, the girl delivers a sermon of epic proportions. I sigh and pull my hand to take milk. Or rather a bag of milk inside. Or rather a bag of milk inside a bag. Or rather, a bag of milk inside a bag of milk. Or rather a bag of milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag. Or rather, a bag of milk inside a bag of milk inside... Okay, let's just not think about that too much. There's a whole other hell waiting for us to check out. Oh! Horrible scoliosis creature. Please let me take my milk in peace.
Give!
So the girl, understandably, kind of forgets how to person, and we remind her that milk is something she needs to pay for. And then, you and the girl walk home together. She sits on a bench and laments to us, the player of her imaginary visual novel, telling us that she knows she's going crazy, and that her meds aren't helping her. And she also doesn't want to say her diagnosis so that we can see her for what she truly is. But, long story short, ever since this happened, she can only see red. This is her dad. He threw himself out a window. And whatever the girl's resulting illness is, it's treatment resistant. And at the end of the game, she meets her mom at home. She's so proud of me. Yeah, it's a very odd meta little game. Quite uncomfortable to play alone in the darkness of your room. And what exactly is going on here? Well, there's the obvious, the bad side effects of a psychiatric drug. Sooner or later, you'll probably realize that we, in fact, are the new drug that the girl is taking. There's all this talk about whether or not we're helping her symptoms, and at the end of the game, the drug's effects wear off, so we can't talk to her anymore. Most people I've seen talk about this game as a representation of anxiety, specifically social anxiety, which I sort of go back and forth on, because I definitely relate to that feeling of being in imminent danger when you're totally not. And when she's with that creature who only speaks in "oh," the girl gets this horrible mental image of a giant abyssal circle, which kind of also reminds me of having anxiety. Anxious people are definitely sensitive to stimuli that set off their imagination. But also, it definitely seems like there's some psychotic symptoms going on, like how the girl feels that her route home changes depending on how she's feeling. But it makes enough sense if you're just going off of the first game. Wait, what did I just say? Oh yes! There's another milk game. And this one's called Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of... I like the first game. It's super tense and weird and cryptic, but there's so much more to pour over in the second game. And honestly, I prefer the atmosphere too. Not only does it pick up right where the first game left off, but there's also this very impressive opening cutscene in which we see the first game from an outsider's point of view. Now, the girl is on her way to her room. But she has this irrational fear that there's a corpse inside her kitchen. She resists the urge for a while, but ultimately bursts through the door, finding nothing but the bag of milk. Although, what exactly did I expect? Gratitude? A bag of milk probably doesn't care if it's on the shelf in the store or on a table in my mom's kitchen. On the other hand, nobody would drink milk inside the store, which means I took it from the safest place in the world and into the scary unknown. I'm so sorry, you poor thing. I turn away in shame and leave the room in a hurry. I only bring others trouble. And then a creature with her mom's face grabs her. It takes out one of its needle claws and sticks it into the girl's arm, injecting a venom. Apparently, this whole song and dance has happened before, and the creature forces her to say over and over again that she'll never drink milk again. So, I did something I don't normally do when writing scripts, and I watched other people's videos about the game. I'll try to be as non-derivative as possible, I promise. Something that I saw one or two people mention is that, in reality, the girl's mom is injecting her with an EpiPen. This is because she guzzled all that milk in the kitchen off camera, to which she happens to be allergic. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, how the hell did they get that impression? Because it seems like a pretty big stretch, but upon further inspection, it kind of makes sense. I don't know why else this weird iteration of the mom would be injecting her. And also, that would explain why the creature demanded that she never drink milk again. So, was the girl trying to harm herself? Did she black out? How many times has this happened? We don't see any indication that she was actually drinking the milk, but we clearly have an unreliable narrator, and this interpretation will come into play later, so we'll just run with it for now. Well, anyway, that's when everything goes black. She comes to in her room, safe at last, and we finally get a good look at the girl, known by fans as Milk-chan. Because we never learn her actual name. Do you guys even know my name? Well, it's Sarah. Nice to meet you. And look at her, she's a downright cutie patootie. Milk-chan is getting ready for bed, but she's not sleepy at all. She finds herself wanting conversation, and so... she takes a second dose of her new meds. The two of you are only supposed to meet once per day, so naturally we heckle her a bit more, and she starts crying. She has this frustration that she can't just take control of her own life, that she needs all these meds to function, and she's not sure she even really trusts them. And God, it's just so real. The other game was very grimy and uncomfortable, but honestly, this one is just plain beautiful and also really sad. Despite Milk-chan living in a nightmare, there's just something really cozy about her room. And she's such a likable person when we get to see her relaxed personality. Even if she is a bit... my thoughts are hiding from me. I really get the sense that her room is like a safe haven. A fortress that the terrors of the world cannot penetrate. Yeah, just like a hunch, and not that I would know anything about that. So this time, instead of a visual novel character, she imagines herself as a point-and-click character. Our objective is like really bizarre, because we have to help her collect all of her thoughts, which have turned into fireflies and scattered across the room. And every time we find one of her fireflies, it gleefully flies into her ear. Wowie!
There's smoke coming from your clothes!
So we learn some things about Milk-chan as we look around. Like if you look at her laptop, she talks about how she used to use it all the time to play games and draw and stuff. And apparently she made a lot of friends on the internet.
I had a lot of friends online. Tens, hundreds of them. Impossible to count. I knew, of course, that no real people exist on the web. I also understood that all of my friends die the moment I turn off my laptop. One day, someone appeared. From that point on, my laptop was always on. There are no real people on the web, but he was good at pretending. At some moment, I let him trick me.
We also learned by looking at her backpack that she didn't graduate high school. On her last day of school, her dad picked her up and said she was too old for the curriculum. And then they went home and had dinner with Mom. But that's not actually what happened. You have to push her a lot to get her to tell the truth on this one. After forcing her to tell the story over and over, she recalls that her dad pulled her out of school, kicking and screaming, which had happened several times before. And he bought milk on the way home. Let's revisit that idea about Milk-chan being allergic to milk. Because this sounds an awful lot like her father was trying to kill her, or otherwise harm her. There's a couple little scenes that can only be accessed by choosing specific dialogue options. One of these secret scenes shows Milk-chan being choked, followed by her crying back in her room. And one of our dialogue options in this scene asks, "Did he bring milk?" She also says that her mom wasn't actually home when her dad picked her up from school, and that she hates her mom, probably for not being there for her. And as all these pieces come together, you start to realize just how hard this girl's life has been. How much she's been failed by those around her. But that's not even the end of it. I'm gonna spoil like everything now, by the way. Oh. At the end of the game, Milk-chan finally wants to go to sleep. We suggest that she go get some fresh air on the balcony first, to which she has a panic attack. It's up to us whether we push her to go or not. If she does, we're met with a strange scene. She explains that her apartment complex used to be normal and linear, but at some point, it circled in on itself. Every now and again, she glances up at the all-consuming black hole in the sky. And if you play your cards right, you can unlock a scene where she imagines herself falling from the balcony as she tells you a story. She once had an online best friend. He shared everything with her, and developed a deep bond with her that made her feel secure and heard. So she told him everything about herself, too. He didn't exactly have the best intentions, though. He took all of these personal anecdotes of hers and plastered them all over the internet, basically turning her into a lolcow, with countless strangers knowing the most intimate details of her life. So now she feels watched everywhere. She wants to never get out of bed or experience senses. Just dream forever. After imagining herself splattering on the ground, she unplugs her computer in the real world. It's kind of a nice moment, because it's the only instance of positive change in Milk-chan's life that we get to see. Anyway, then it's bedtime. She declares that she will no longer be taking her new medicine, so this is our final encounter together. And as she drifts off to sleep, she'll have one of 5 dreams. Depending on your dialogue choices and certain actions, you can trigger different endings. While I find this game oddly cozy, comforting, and intimate, pretty much all of the endings fucked me up a little. In the first dream, which is kind of the default ending, Milk-chan is walking on a familiar road where she meets an annoying young boy. His name is Tresca, and he makes him escort him to the store. Yeah, basically it's the first game all over again, but Milk-chan takes our place as the player. She thinks Tresca is crazy, and the boy flips the fuck out when he tries to talk to a fellow customer. And then he starts crying and screaming. Everyone in the store hates him, and he holds up the checkout line because he won't pay for his milk. So Milk-chan pays and walks him out of the store, at which point Tresca declares that she isn't helping him at all. I think this dream is about her self-image. Not only is she tormented from dawn to dusk, she also has this belief that she only makes other people unhappy. She sees herself as an unwanted burden. And it makes me wonder if anybody else might have instilled that in her. There's a bit where she remarks that her mother's notes telling her the dosage and side effects of her meds look like claw marks. And this leads me to wonder, why does Milk-chan see her mother as a monster? Actually, that's just one of many questions. Why did she used to go to physical therapy? Was she injured? There's little enough evidence that you basically have to fill in your own blanks, but it's pretty hard to fill them in with anything that's not super upsetting. All of these endings are similarly fucked. Like, there's one where Milk-chan is descending a gigantic spiral staircase in an abyss of gigantic staircases, and another where she's trapped in a pitch-black room where the exit moves farther away the more she chases it. And honestly, I really don't know what it's all about. The third ending is the one that made me the most uncomfortable, and I'm just gonna show it to you. Yeah, the visuals and sound design are super creepy here. But it's also that sense of losing yourself and seeing a strange foreign entity in the mirror that really gets to me. There's an extent to which we all cling to our egos and identities, and for me, feeling that slip away is one of the scariest things about anxiety or other mental health issues. Especially when it distorts you into this monstrous thing that isn't anything like how other people see you. In the last stream, we see Milk-chan outside on her phone. She's texting a pizzeria and telling it all of her deeply personal anxieties. This game just feels so goddamn lonely. Here she's talking to a wall, some pizza automaton. But at least, sometimes just getting the words out makes them less scary. And this almost doesn't even feel like a dream sequence, like I'd fully expect this of her waking life. But no matter what dream you get, the game always ends with this cutscene. There's something very static about this story. We're just watching a person cling to the last scraps of hope she has left. It's not pandering, it's not telling you that things will or won't get better. It's just a tableau of how things are. It's showing someone surviving day by day in a very sad, scary, lonely existence. Throughout this whole experience, I just wanted to give her a hug. That massive void in the sky, her giant O. To me, it kind of represents annihilation, either death or loss of self or free falling into insanity. It's always there, no matter how much Milk-chan tries to distract herself from it. At least she believes it's always there. But what even is her diagnosis? Well, like I said, a lot of people talk about this game in the context of anxiety. And, yeah, it's pretty evocative of such things. I mean, I don't want to try and relate too much because it seems she has psychotic symptoms and I don't know what that's like. But without taking those into account, this game is one of the most visceral depictions of severe anxiety I've ever seen. I've definitely felt a bit like this before. Feeling as though you're watching your own sanity slip away, seeing a strange version of the world that no one around you can, not knowing whether your meds are helping or hurting you, thinking the worst fate imaginable is hanging precariously over your head and waiting to come crashing down at any minute. You know, the fun stuff. And then when you try to go to sleep and just forget about it all, you just can't. She talks about seeing things, like how the world looks red to her, but the word hallucination is never used. Words like anxiety and panic attack are, though, so I could see the argument that it's more a representation of an overactive, anxious imagination. But at the end of the day, I don't know if it really even matters what her diagnosis is. I mean, Milk-chan herself doesn't even want to say. All we know is that this is a traumatized, suffering person. Honestly, this story kind of reminds me of another visual novel game type thing. Maybe I should talk about that one at some point. She has this sense that she's not long for the world, and that's really sad. But at least for now, she's still going. What a waste of milk. Well, thanks for watching.
I am the milkman. My milk is delicious.